So, it turns out a lot of you guys are pretty injured. After I posted my video on building stronger knees, I was inundated with requests for similar videos tackling ankles, shoulders, hips, and just about everything else. But for now, I'm covering elbow pain. This is a subject close to my heart because I have struggled with elbow pain myself on and off multiple times, and it's something that a lot of people deal with on a regular basis. And there's good reason for this, not only because a lot of the movements we use in the gym, in fact, the vast majority of them put a lot of pressure on the elbows, but also because a lot of things we do in our daily lives actually exacerbates this issue, just like it often does for things like shoulder issues, hip mobility problems. We're just piling dysfunction on dysfunction. The good news is that by just making a couple of small tweaks to your training, adding a couple of small exercises into your regime, you can actually undo a lot of this damage and build much stronger tendons that are going to be perfect for climbing ropes, performing cool calisthenics moves, and even things like deadlifts, which likewise can put a lot of pressure on the biceps and on these tendons. And as a nice added bonus, this can also lead to much bigger bicep. And if that sounds good, then on with the weird curls. Before we start to strengthen our elbows, let's first look at what can go wrong with them in the first place and why they're often so weak to begin with. Tennis elbow, or lateral epicondylitis, is pain felt on the outside of the elbows and is the result of repetitive movements such as curling or playing tennis, or hyperextension during movements like punching. You'll notice you also experience this pain when performing gripping, extension and twisting, supination movements with the hand and wrist. Supination meaning that you're turning the palm upwards towards the ceiling. This can affect several extensors, most prominently the carpi radialis brevis and the rest of the common extensor tendons. Golfer's elbow, conversely, is pain felt on the inside of the elbow, at the medial epicondyle, a bony protrusion on the inside of the humerus. You'll feel this during flexing and pronation. Any tendon that inserts at the medial epicondyle can be the cause here, including the pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, etc. Golfer's elbow is commonly caused by golf, hence the name, but it can also be caused by a number of throwing movements and by climbing. It's also sometimes called climber's elbow for this reason, and it's actually also very common among manual labourers. Finally, you might experience pain in the biceps muscles themselves, or in the distal biceps tendon that connects the bicep to the radius. It's also possible, though much less common, to experience injuries affecting the triceps and triceps tendons. Just as strengthening the ankle can prevent knee complaints, strengthening the wrist and shoulders can help to avoid elbow injuries. The wrist is probably the prime candidate for many people here. This is because several tendons span both the elbow and the wrist joint. For example, the extensor carpi radialis brevis originates at the humerus, the lateral epicondyle, and inserts at the posterior base of the third metacarpal, the base of the middle finger, on the back. So, pain in the elbows is often actually the result of a weak wrist or forearm. This may partly explain my own bad luck, seeing as I broke my wrist into pieces when I was 13, pretending to be Jackie Chan. Nearly every exercise you perform with free weights is also a grip exercise. Specifically, you'll be using the flexors in order to close your hand around the bar, but this also creates activation in the extensors. Very often, the antagonist muscles work as stabilizers for the prime movers. In this case, the extensors come online to prevent the wrist from fully flexing. This creates imbalance. The extensors become overly fatigued without being directly strengthened in the way that flexors so often are. So it's no wonder that they can become tired and then injured. Either that or your poor overworked flexors simply give up. Making matters worse is our lifestyles, as usual. If you use a mouse or keyboard, then you're constantly flexing your wrists and fingers and doing very little extension. If you do this all day, then go and lift weights, you've just increased your chances of injury. A lack of mobility in the wrists can also be an issue, as tightness makes injury more likely when falling onto both hands. A simple fix or preventative measure is to train your wrist extensors and flexors. You can do this with both pronated and supinated wrist curls. Pronated wrist curls are best for tennis elbow, while supinated are useful for golfer's elbow, but you should always do both. Balance is key. You can also buy devices that provide their own resistance to use. Check out my all-new toolkit page on thebioneer.com, which I'll link to in the description down below. Here you can find the one I use, and links to all of the different things that I use in my videos, and all the services and gadgets that I recommend. And a really simple exercise you can use to combat this to an extent is just a pronated grip on a barbell curl or dumbbell curls. So just take the weight. Now you're going to use an overhand grip and curl it like so. And now what you're doing is you're fighting the weight that's trying to force your wrist into flexion. So now you're maintaining an isometric hold in the forearm extensors, strengthening them and hopefully preventing that imbalance that affects so many people. One of my favourite exercises for building biceps and stronger elbows is the biceps curl with supination. Start with the palms facing inward and then twist them upwards as you curl. The biceps are responsible for not only elbow flexion but also shoulder flexion and supination of the forearm. Supination means turning the palm upwards, which means you're training two different functions of the biceps at once. Hammer curls are great too. These are curls using a neutral grip with the palms facing inward. They focus more on the long head of the biceps, located on the lateral, that's exterior, side of the biceps. It also hits the brachialis, brachioradialis and pronator teres. The good news is that this can add significantly to your bicep size if you're using only supinated curls and will help create bulging forearms too. Finally, hammer curls can be excellent to strengthen the elbows ready for rope climbing, another exercise that's very tough on this joint. A more straightforward injury is the old biceps or biceps tendon tear. This can be caused by overdoing it on bicep curls, chin-ups or deadlifts, which also means it can happen when just lifting anything heavy. So planche training is actually one of the best tools you can use to strengthen that tendon. But of course we're not just going to jump into planche training, instead we're going to use progressions like the pseudo planche push-up. This is a push-up performed with the hands further back around waist level, and the upper body positioned forwards to create a slight lean. Your hands will be turned outwards or even behind, and you're going to push up from there as you normally would, but make sure to fully straighten and lock out the elbows at the top of the movement to work your straight arm strength. This is where all that pressure is going to be placed on the biceps tendons. You should also push through the ground with your arms straight, thereby protracting the scapula. If you want to build up to planche, this is a must, but anyone can benefit from this exercise. It builds injury-proof biceps that are especially useful for those that do lots of deadlifts. You can also strengthen your biceps with high volume bicep curls. Obviously, using higher volume will help to get lots of blood flow into the area, and if you use continuous time under tension, this may encourage capillarization, meaning you can actually create new blood vessels feeding the biceps and tendons. This is very important as the tendons receive less blood flow compared with muscles, making them slower to grow and recover and more prone to injuries. Eccentrics are also fantastic for strengthening tendons. This means slowing down and focusing on the lengthening or lowering portion of the movement. Get help lifting a barbell into position and then very slowly let it lower again. Alternatively, you can try jumping up to a pull-up bar and then lowering yourself slowly in a chin-up position. In one study, it was found that using eccentric heel dips could treat chronic Achilles tendinopathy more so than simple rest and NSAIDs. At the other end of the arm, of course, we also should be strengthening the shoulders. This will aid with stabilisation to prevent unnecessary torque and impact on the elbows when throwing and performing other movements. I'll talk more about shoulder mobility and stability in my shoulder video, but strengthening the scapula with scapular push-ups and scapular pull-ups can help here, or you can get the same benefits with scapular protraction and retraction during other exercises, like the aforementioned pseudo-planche push-ups. You can also train the rotator cuffs with a variety of exercises like the prone external rotation or lawnmower row, or the classic forward, lateral and rear dumbbell raises, or one of my favourites for shoulder stability and mobility, the gamma cast, which can equally be swapped out for kettlebell halos or Bulgarian bag spins. Start light. Oh, and I also love the weight plate steering wheel. Hold a weight plate in front of you like a forward raise with both hands, then twist it left and right, like you're pretending to drive a car. It's funny just how many videos and articles that focus on building elbow strength and resilience entirely talk about the biceps, forgetting that obviously the elbow moves in two directions, so the triceps also on the back have a big role to play. Strengthening the opposing muscle, the antagonist, can be a great way to prevent injury in any range of motion. And this is something that, once again, the knees over toes guy talks about. He's not all about knees. Obviously, some activities do involve kicking the elbow backwards, and as antagonistic muscles, they also have a stabilization role to play. Whenever you're doing a curl or anything else, the antagonist muscle always activates to a certain extent to try and keep the joint steady. So you really want to strengthen these to prevent those injuries. And in fact, your musculature in your arm should be more like 2/3 tricep, 1/3 bicep. So you should actually be doing a lot more stuff for your triceps than a lot of people do, especially if you're isolating the biceps through a ton of movements. I don't want to get too general here, as this post is about stronger elbows, but of course proper nutrition is crucial, as is generally using varied regular movement. Doing hundreds of curls with a single grip and movement pattern without ever switching up is of course going to lead to imbalances and overuse injuries. This is obvious when we really stop and think about it. Variation will create balance, and another way to do this is by climbing trees or even climbing around a pull-up bar, which naturally forces you to change your position and your grip. This is again why I believe in varying and mixing up your training. The body likes variable movement. It was never designed to stick to one rigid range of motion, using man-made tools. Overuse injuries aren't really about doing something too much. It's about doing something so much more than anything else you do. Joints are designed to last a lifetime. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that if you have a bad elbow, you should suddenly start lifting lots of heavy weight at weird angles. That's only going to exacerbate the issue. The point is to strengthen slowly, to use progressive overload to strengthen those weak areas, those weaker tendons and smaller muscles. And we can do this first by using very light weights and higher repetitions, slow controlled movements, and then building up to heavier weights as you get more confident. You can use easier progressions, etc. Listen to your body, ease into it, and always check with the doctor. As I said in my knees video, anything could be wrong with you. You could have an infection, you could have a stress fracture, so don't guess the issue and then try and fix it. This is more just a way to fortify your elbows, and some exercises you can try to strengthen them and speed up your recovery with the go-ahead from someone who's actually checked you over in person. And consider that we're all different. As I've mentioned before, I recently had my DNA analysed by self-decode. I learned, among other things, that I have a tendency towards tendon and muscle injuries, a tendency. This is partly due to a variation in a gene called SOD2, which helps to alleviate oxidative damage and inflammation by producing an enzyme called superoxide dismutase. My homozygous AA genotype is correlated with lower SD production and higher muscle inflammation markers. The wellness report I received from self-decode suggested that I could combat this with H2 supplementation, seeing as some studies show that this can actually raise SOD levels. I'm trying that right now, and I'll let you know how I get on. If you'd like to try out self-decode and have your own DNA analysed, then you can actually find a link to that in the description down below. I actually get some commission on that, so if you make an order, it'll support the site in a big way. But the point is not to say that you should take hydrogen, although maybe. Rather, the point is that we are all different, and different things work for different people. And you may in fact be more or less prone to tendon and bicep injuries. Don't beat yourself up if it happens to you. It's part of the training journey. And finally, don't give up on those persistent pains and injuries. The answer is out there somewhere, you might just not have found it yet. And hopefully, some of these tips will work for you. So I hope you found this video useful and interesting, guys. If you did, then please leave a like and share it around. That would help me out immensely. Let me know in the comments down below if you've ever experienced elbow pain, how you fixed it, or whether you're still working towards a fix right now. Subscribe, of course, if you want more content like this, and hit the bell button to be notified of new videos as I upload them. If you're looking for a training program that combines multiple different training modalities to help avoid injury and improve performance across the board, then you might be interested in my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training. I'll put a link to that in the description down below, and there's a discount on right now whilst we're dealing with the pandemic. Alternatively, you could try my print book, Functional Training and Beyond. This is an introduction and a broad overview of functional training as a topic. If you want to learn more about how to make the most out of your body and what functional training means for the average person, then you should check that out as well, and I'll likewise leave a link in the description down below. That's now available on Audible as well, and the short supply in Europe and the UK has seemingly been fixed. Thanks so much for all your support on that, by the way. The positive reviews are much appreciated. The reaction has been overwhelming, and I'm very grateful. As I am for your continued support of the channel, for your comments, and for watching these videos. It's all amazing. So yeah, thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.